So with this low pressure front moving in, we can expect thunderstorms, flooding, and probably even a tornado before we get out of this weekend. I know it's not good news, but please stop sending the death threats to my wife.
Jeremy, thanks. In other news, the world is facing multiple global crises. Weakened by the resurgence of nationalism, paralysed by its obsession with social media, and depressed by an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. It's clear that, in these dark times, nobody really has all the answers. With that in mind, we go now live to our reporter in the field, Richard Thornton. Rich, tell us, what's the word on the street?
Thanks, James. You may say that no one has the answers, but I'm here today with the man on the street, Kevin from Kent. Kevin, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm alright, mate. Cheers.
That's great, Kevin. And what do you do for a living?
Oh, I own the local Greggs down the road. Best sausages in town.
Kevin, how do we stop Brexit?
How do we stop Brexit? Well, I suppose really, it's Labour that's got to get its act together, hasn't it? I mean, they haven't come out with a uniformed stance on either side.
And what about wars in the Middle East?
Middle East? I guess that, America's inconsistent handling of the situation hasn't really helped matters, and that they could do with providing humanitarian aid rather than just stimulating the conflict.
Does God exist?
Does God exist? Well, I guess that kind of depends on how you define God.
And what about Africa?
Well, what about Africa? Does it exist?
What do we do to fix Africa?
Well, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about, like, malaria? Or are we talking about the water
Africa's
crisis?
broken, Kevin. What do we do to fix it? Kevin, tell us this. Is democracy inherently flawed by its tendency to favor personality over policy and substance? Is the reason communism's consistently failed a result of its hopelessly ideological foundations, or merely the moral bankruptcy of those who have implemented it? Why aren't governments of the world taking climate change more seriously, despite overwhelming scientific evidence that it threatens to eradicate the bulk of the human species?
I own the local Greggs.
Kevin from Kent, tell us all. We seem to have the resources at hand. The human genome's been mapped. Will humanity ever attain immortality? Will we, as a species, ever explore the stars or settle a permanent off-world colony? Or will our species be erased by an asteroid before we can leave the cradle of our own genesis? Has the 24-hour news cycle created a vapid, journalism-free, meaning-devoid representation of reality, geared primarily at attracting enough ratings to satisfy the requisites of corporate commercial interests attempting to shape opinion by virtue of market saturation? Does life have meaning, Kevin, or are we just suffering here for no reason? Kevin from Kent, tell us all!
No. I'm sorry, Mum.
Kevin from Kent, are we all living in a computer simulation? Well, James, I think that about sums it up down here on the street. I'll be back with traffic on the 9s, and until then, back to you and Jeremy in the studio.
Thank you, Rich, for that informative report. Now, this is the point in the broadcast where you at home get to have your say on today's discussion via social media. Let's see what people are saying on the 7 Action News Facebook wall. Martha from Detroit writes, N-word, 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 C-word, N-word, M-word, Trump, lol. Thank you, Martha, for sharing your thoughts. Let's go now to Twitter. Jeremy, could you open up the Twitter?
Oh, sure thing, James.
More on that at 11. Coming up now on the show, are government-mandated cyanide pills giving your kids headaches? We go now to our panel of expert judges, a homeopathic scientist, a gynecologist, and a homeless man.